Welcome to this explainer. I want to kick things off today with a personal memory. Growing up in Mbuji-Mayi, there was this one specific stretch of road right near our house that flooded every single rainy season. Year after year, it just turned into this massive pit of mud and became completely impassable. And honestly, the most striking part about it, nobody expected the government to fix it. The very idea that the municipality would actually show up and do its job simply didn't exist in our lived experience. Well, today, we're going to look at the flip side of that reality. We're going to finally outline the generational work required to actually fund African cities and explore what might, finally, actually work.
So, where do we even begin? Well, instead of parachuting in with top-down policies and grand master plans from distant capitals, transforming a neighborhood actually starts with this incredibly simple question. By just asking the community what they need, whether that's a paved access road, a new water kiosk, or a market canopy, you allow community authorship to take the lead. This isn't just about pouring concrete or building infrastructure. It's about planting the very first seeds of civic ownership.
All right, that brings us to Section 1, the core principle, reversing the failed assumption.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To actually make civic ownership a reality, we have to completely flip a massive assumption that has honestly doomed development efforts for 60 years. On the left, you see the traditional model. Tax, then spend. This standard approach essentially asks citizens to pay into a broken system that they have every rational reason to distrust. And guess what? It fails every single time. On the right, though, is the necessary new paradigm. Spend before you tax. This means external capital has to be spent to deliver visible, tangible results to the community first. It's not just some bridge to self-sufficiency, it is literally the foundation of it.
Here's the absolute kicker. Legitimacy creates taxation, not the other way around. Behavioral research on fiscal compliance in low-trust environments is crystal clear on this. People only comply with new payments after seeing value delivered. They have to see it with their own two eyes. Visible delivery is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for building a rational tax base. Taxation simply cannot create legitimacy. It has to be the other way around.
Moving right along to Section 2, the foundation, the Minimum Viable Municipality.
Most development programs fall flat because they try to parachute in an entire modern Western institution all at once. It's just too much. We must start with the absolute bare minimum. And really, it boils down to just 4 things. First, 2 staff members, a community organizer and a finance manager. Second, 1 completely separate bank account, entirely immune to bureaucratic mingling. Third, 1 public notice board that gets updated every single week for radical transparency. And fourth, 1 trusted local partner, like a church or a women's cooperative, just to verify the money was spent correctly. That's it. These are exact, radical components that are totally achievable right now with existing resources in almost any provincial African city.
Just look at that definition. It completely bypasses what the standard development playbook says you need first. Notice what's missing here? There's no cadastre, no complex digital tax system, no aggressive enforcement capacity. None of it. Those complex systems? They only come later. This structure is designed with one single, laser-focused goal in mind: establishing trust through visible delivery.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the scaffolding, the 3-phase sequence.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how we need to sequence the work. A quick warning, though. Doing these phases out of order practically guarantees the exact same failure as everyone who tried before us. Step 1 is Phase 0, where we take $30,000 to $80,000 of external seed funding to build a project the community actually chose. Then Step 2 is Phase 1, which introduces voluntary weekly micropayments, say $1 a week to maintain that specific new asset. Finally, we reach Step 3, Phase 2. Only here do we arrive at formal microtaxation. And we only get here because the social contract has actually been negotiated through practice rather than just forced by decree.
I really want to hammer this point home. The output of Phase 0 is trust. It is not revenue. In fact, it produces absolutely $0 for the municipal budget. And this is exactly why your standard development programs usually skip it, because you can't put trust on a budget line. But listen, without this foundational trust, every single thing downstream just crumbles.
Now let's talk about the money in Section 4, real revenue, the 6 pillars.
Once that trust is genuinely built, we can transition to real revenue instruments that actually survive scrutiny. And these mechanisms are brilliant in their pragmatism.
Notice that absolutely none of them involve trying to squeeze an annual property tax out of subsistence traders. For example, look at capturing just a tiny fraction of the DRC's $1.35 billion in informal diaspora remittances for external seed capital. Or take the commercial node levies. That's simply giving legal status to the 50-cent daily fees that are already being collected at market stalls. That step alone can generate $150,000 a year for a central market. It's all about formalizing the money that is already moving.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the final revenue pillar. $88.6 billion. That represents the staggering amount of money exiting Africa every single year through international illicit financial flows, things like profit shifting and trade misinvoicing. To put that into perspective, this number completely dwarfs all foreign aid combined.
So, what does this all mean? Well, while those international illicit financial flows dwarf local tax collection, you simply cannot fight that global battle without a capable state. And you definitely don't get a capable state without local legitimacy. Building that local municipal trust is the necessary, unavoidable first step to ever having a government capable of fighting for that offshore money. It all starts at home.
This brings us to Section 5, the horizon, the honest timeline.
Here is probably the hardest truth in this entire explainer. Fixing municipal finance is not a quick 5-year electoral plan. It is a generational commitment. Let's trace this out together. Years 1 to 3, you are looking at zero revenue, pure trust building and visible delivery. Years 3 to 6, you start seeing modest revenue, maybe $180,000 to $400,000 as the habit of contribution begins to form. Years 10 to 20 bring formal microtaxation. And notice that bottom line, the holy grail of Western finance, the annual property tax, is literally decades away. But being upfront and honest about this timeline, that is actually our greatest strength.
That long horizon isn't a limitation. It's just a realistic acknowledgement of how societies are built. Stable fiscal infrastructure, the exact kind that people in the West take for granted every day, is the residue of decades of contested, slowly trusted civic life. Every quick fix we've tried has failed precisely because it was a quick fix. We have to play the long game.
And finally, Section 6, the payoff. Returning to the flooded road.
So, let's loop right back to where we started today, back to that perpetually flooded road in Mbuji-Mayi. Picture a kid growing up there right now, watching their neighborhood actually come together. They transparently build and maintain that road together. That child grows up with a fundamentally altered relationship with the state. I want to leave you with this final thought. Taxing orange sellers will not build Africa's cities. Delivering roads they did not expect might eventually create the citizens who will pay to maintain them. This paradigm shift definitely requires patience, but it just might be the only path that actually works. Thanks for learning with me today.